You think Tyler dropped album of the year?
Great album.
Hey man, listen, I want to talk about this, man, because I was saying this even before the album dropped. I was like, man, we don't talk enough about the run that Tyler's on.
I
Like
agree.
from Flower Boy to Igor, which is my personal favorite of the four, to Call Me If You Get Lost, this one. It's yo, this dude knows how to make music and he knows how to arrange. Like, this sounds like an album. Like, when we talk about people putting together albums, full projects, transitions, skits, putting people in the right places. Like, even when I heard the record with Glorilla, Wayne, and Sexy Red, I'm like, this is so smart. Like, this is like he's putting everything in the right places. And I mean, again, I think this is a great transition from the Neptunes because you clearly hear the Neptune influence, mostly nerd, I would say. And he's able to fuse all of these things together. Um, and he does it so seamlessly. And I think his bar work is, has elevated over the years as well. I could hear some Kendrick influence in some of his bar work on
I
this
love
one.
the production of the album. The
Oh
production
man.
of the album was very creative. It was dope. I like the transitions. I like the introduction. It's kind of story like, the woman in the beginning is little lessons or things that he was told that you could imagine growing up with, and you see the tone of the songs. Like, I like the Jane record. I like, there's things on there where it's like, man, it flows, bro. And I even like the line that he said, like, after Kendrick, and don't quote me, this is not the actual line, but it's to the likes of the line. Is like, after Kendrick, he's that guy, and that's fact. And we can't argue with that.
Well, you know what?
Out of LA that's really been on a run, been on a tear, and just as big.
If I'm being real, and you guys are gonna say I'm Kendrick hating, if we're going by the past 4 albums, I think his 4 album run has been better than Kendrick's 4 album run because Mr. Morale is a miss. It is what it is. Mad Max in the super chat says, trash album, he bit 40 people. I wouldn't expect anything less from you, Mad Max. I wouldn't expect anything less. Darling I is a hit. I think Sticky is a hit. Again, one of the things that for me, while I don't want to say never really got into Tyler, but I think that how he came in the game on some shock value shit and on some, just saying anything, kind of almost on some weirdo shit, some Eminem shit, really, if we want to be honest, some shady stuff.
Yeah.
I never really got into that, but I did appreciate when he came with some music. And like I said, starting with Flower Boy, he kind of started changing and start growing. And this is an artist that we're seeing growing and continuing to grow. He really could have kept going on that whole Igor thing, but then he came back to the hip hop thing. And this one is kind of like a mixture of both.
You want to know something funny about Tyler? Like, I wasn't a fan of his music to begin with. I like the character of Tyler, the Lord Squad stuff. I like the Odd Future introduction into the game. I like that it was different. They were creative. They all had their own separate talents. But I never really got into his music. Then I started listening around, like, I guess 2 albums ago. Then it made me revisit some of the other stuff. And I'm like it or not, outside of the craziness of the character and things that he do to push the line, he's been creative with his albums, man. He's approached each album different, and one of the
enough credit for that.
Yeah, man. And it's just like, I have to respect that because he's been consistent. We know he can rap if he really want to, aside from some of the weird shit, I think he has a way of really going into the studio and coming with a different way of approaching music. And I like to say that about even though he's not much of a rapper, in my opinion, but like, it reminds me like Travis Scott. Travis Scott has a way of albums that's sort of different from what the rest of the people are doing. It's like the tones of the albums has been different and has been like just creative, man. I can't not acknowledge that.
It sounds like, and I'm glad you said that because when I heard the album and I start thinking about this 4 album run, I'm thinking about Travis too because their music sonically, this sounds like the future. This sounds like now. I'm more comfortable, and no disrespect to any of the efforts that came out this year because I think we had some really good efforts that came out this year. I'm more comfortable calling something album of the year that I think sounds like what we're going to be doing for the next 2-3 years. You know what I'm saying? Like sounds forward. And this right here is even from the intro, the beat change on there, like, yo, what is this? You want that feeling when you hear records. And from a production standpoint, you're right. Him and Travis give us that, and they give their fan base that, and it's so creative from a sonic standpoint that the lyrics and all of that just fall into place. But even with the lyrics here, like you said, the Jane record, taking on those two perspectives, taking on the topic that he took on, those are things that you don't normally get, or at least on face value, from a Travis record or from a Tyler record. You know what I'm saying? And he's really continuously growing as an artist, and it's refreshing to see. Lord with the super chat says, "Still Easty, East Siders." Shout out to them, man. Got to check that album out too.
Yeah.
Jermaine Johnson with the super chat says, "Sidebar from Lord Willing album, Malice left Earth on his I'm Not You verse." Yeah, he did. Left Earth.
Yeah.
Fitting that he converted to Christianity. He said, I'm sorry, fitting that he converted to Christianity shortly after. Right, right. Mad Max to the super chat says, LOL, Mike, I'm serious. He copied Dot, Travis, Ye, Doe, Shy, etc. He started the album with some Mr. Morale alternative rap, then started whispering like Drake on Meltdown, which is 21 Savage's flow. Really dissect this man.
You want to know what's kind of crazy? What if it surprises people that Tyler has a lot of hands in other people's work?
Exactly. I was gonna say that too. Mad Max in the super chat says random beat switches. That means nothing. Has no purpose. Just doing it on the whim, which is whack. There's no rhyme or reason for his methodology. It's just a guy trying to be weird just to be weird. I could see that from the antic standpoint, but musically, I don't see that. And I agree with you, Siobhan. I think somebody musically as talented as a Tyler the Creator probably has his hands in a lot of things you guys don't know that he has his hands in. Pause. We've seen him actually work in the studio. We've seen him actually put stuff together in the studio. He's doing this stuff.
And when you really hear him talk about the music, it actually comes from a place of him talking about the art of music. He doesn't really bullshit when it comes to those music talks. It's like, yeah, you actually could tell he has some effort when it's not about, BSing with it with the material, man. I mean, he may add some humor outside of it, within it, say some wild stuff. It's a character to it. Some of it's just crazy enough to where I'll be like, man, I ain't turn this off. But when he really gets to the albums and the amount of creativity and effort he puts into it, we can't say it's not there.
He knows what he's doing. Like from a creative standpoint, is really refreshing. Like you said, when you hear somebody talk about music, they know what they're talking about and they know how to put things together. It was like when when they was doing the verses back in 2020. I think it was Dallas Austin and Jermaine Dupri. They did like a Instagram live where they were just talking about songs that they made. And Jermaine Dupri, great producer, great executive, and all of that. But a lot of his stuff was more collaborative, right? Whereas when Dallas was talking about the records that he made, it was you could tell he did that stuff. Like you could tell he wrote this stuff, he arranged this stuff, he put this stuff together, he played on this stuff because the stories were so detailed and it made so much sense. It all came together. And I get that from when Tyler talks about music. And you hear that with each and every product. I think he needs to get his flowers a little bit more in this era because we start talking about big threes and this and that, but we can't overlook this 4-album run like it didn't matter in this era.
And then on top of that, one last point I do have about Tyler. This is a guy that comes from the West Coast without having the West Coast stereotype tagged on him musically. You know, the the gangster background of the Crip blood, things that follow him, that LA, you know, like the game effect, the whatever, you know, him
It's
and
always been hard for those guys, like the
yeah, those
hieroglyphic
guys that have been able to kind of be from the West Coast, come from those areas, and actually make music doesn't have to go with the stereotype that kind of furthers them in notoriety. I think it deserves, you know, a listen of that creativity and see how they do it. Because it's easy to be from the West Coast and be just another West Coast guy that's talking about they block a neighborhood, gang banging and all that. For somebody who really kind of has music that doesn't reflect that, but they can go there if they really want to, because it's not like they haven't been around the environment and seen it, but seeing that they're going a totally different direction, no matter if you like how loony or crazy it is, the creativity is there, man. We got to give them some credit.
But you know who was that for the '90s era? It was Del the Funky Homo Sapien. You know, Ice Cube's cousin. He, you know, part of the hieroglyphic. Shout out to them. It's like he was from the West Coast, but he dared to be different and made brilliant projects. And you know, even did the rapping on damn, what's the song called? Big hit. It'll come to me in a second. Anyway, he, you know, he didn't join in on that West Coast wave, that gangster wave. And it's very difficult when you dare to be different and don't do what your market's doing. And I think that, like you said, if Tyler was doing some of those things, then maybe he would get some props here and there. But I appreciate his influence and the fact that you could tell, like I said, Nerd is a big influence of his. He comes from the weirdo lineage, man, which
Yeah, I
I would
mean,
track back to a Tribe Called Quest. So, you know, I fuck with it.
yeah, you know, I can't say I like all his stuff, but you know, like I said, album wise, he has been on a run. Let's not act like his last album didn't do what it was, you know, didn't do well. It did. And when
Yeah.
he makes comments like he's kind of like the one after Kendrick, and that's a fact. Who can contest that out the West, you know?
Well, I'm glad that he did get some flowers, if you will, from his last effort, because I think that went into the energy of this one. And I don't know if Call Me If You Get Lost didn't get the type of praise that it got. I don't know if he would get Glorilla and Sexy Red and Wayne on the record. Wayne was on the last album too. So I mean, Wayne sounded good once again. That's the other thing. When you got guys like Tyler and Travis, they know what they're doing musically. That's why everybody who collaborates with them sounds so good on these records. I
Yeah.
really wish Tyler would produce for more people, because, and maybe he is and we don't know it, because people sound great over these records, man.
Yeah, man. And then not only that, another thing I would like to say is like when we talk about the talent that's been produced out the West Coast, and shout out to Absol, I seen that he has a album coming soon that he's
Shout
working
out to
on.
Ab.
Um,
Love
but when we really think about the talent coming out of West Coast, lyricist wise, they haven't really disappointed, man.
it. Now,
They haven't. So shout out to the West Coast.
Mad Max with the super chat says, laughing my ass off, Mike. Your praise for Tyler, who is just a bizarro Eminem when you listen to most of the West Coast rappers from 2010 on, they all influenced by M. Dre, polluted the West Coast by co-signing M. You know what? I could see how Tyler's antics could be very Slim Shady-esque, but musically, production-wise, no. It's not even the same.